Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about Florida State and the ACC. Possibly could be pushing towards a little bit of mediation. Maybe the end of that case, but I wouldn't necessarily hold your breath on that. But let's get into the transfer portal. There has been so much happening. We are kind of nearing the end of when kids can actually enter the portal. I think we have about 6 days left here where they are eligible to enter the portal, and we have commitments rolling in. In fact, a lot of commitments have rolled in over the past couple of days. So I want to start with the big board, just kind of give you an idea of where some of the players sit. These are the players that are still in the portal actively. Now, I do have some intel on some of these players that I'll get to here in a bit, but let's start with the commitments, the guys that have found their way off this transfer portal big board in the recent days. And let's start with Bill Norton. The defensive tackle from Arizona was a huge part of a very, very good run defense out there. He has committed to Texas. It was something that we talked about a little bit. Seemed like everything was pointing in that direction. Johnny Nansen has been hired there at Texas, who was the defensive coordinator at Arizona, so makes a lot of sense. Definitely one that I felt like they had the inside track on, and they officially have locked him up. Now, one thing that did not go so well on the defensive tackle front for Texas was Jay Toia, who I'm not sure if I included him here or not, but let's just touch on it now. Jay Toia was a defensive tackle from UCLA, I do believe, and he has decided to stay at UCLA. So a huge, huge thing for the Bruins. Definitely someone that they needed to stick around, but Texas was very much after him. He was on campus last week for their spring game, so definitely one that I think some Texas fans had already kind of penned into the transfer portal team, but obviously that's not going to happen. Jay Toia is going to stay put, which is great news. I love whenever a kid gets into the portal, weighs all his options, and figures out, well, where I am is actually the best place for me. So definitely some good news there for the Bruins. Dallin Hayden is another commit. He has committed to Colorado, a replacement they very much needed because of something that happened yesterday that I will get into later. But I do think Dallin Hayden will be the go-to back for Colorado this year, kind of the featured back. Played sparingly at Ohio State, but was just stuck behind some absolute dudes, so don't necessarily fault him on that at all. Peyton Kirkland is another guy that committed to Colorado, an offensive lineman from Texas, who is someone that is probably the most physically gifted offensive lineman they have on the roster right now, and he just got on the roster. So Dion continues to do what he's done this entire time, which is just continue to upgrade that talent. Now, can you put it into a winning team? We'll find out. But I think this is a kid that could definitely start for them in week one, either at that right tackle or left tackle or even an interior position. He's a very athletic kid that can play a number of positions on that line. Jermaine Lowell is another one that committed. He committed to Oklahoma, a defensive lineman from Louisville who was just very, very dominant throughout his time, has been playing college football for quite some time. I believe has one more year of eligibility, so contract year for him. Tons going into this, and when you look across that defensive line for Oklahoma, the edge rushers are incredible. The interior defensive line could use some work, and Jermaine Lowell helps that a ton. So this could be one of the better defensive fronts that we see the entire season because of this addition, but also some of the edge rushers that they have are just remarkable. Excuse me. Tyler Williams is another one. He is committed to Minnesota. He makes his way there from UGA. He kind of just never really found the field at UGA, but was a very highly touted kid coming out of high school, and I think he could be a huge piece for the Golden Gophers this year where, no one's talking about Minnesota, to be totally fair, but who knows? Maybe they could make some noise in this new Big Ten where everyone's focused on Oregon and Ohio State and Michigan, that maybe Minnesota sneaks in there and wreaks some havoc. But Nigel Kelly has committed to UCF. This is a kid that was coming from Miami, super long. I think he's 6'6", someone that does really solid in the pass rush game. Not necessarily to the level of a Reuben Bain or these elite pass rushers in college football, but is definitely a good piece and someone that I think UCF is going to love, and Gus Malzahn has done a really good job in the portal thus far. Henry Parrish, a guy that we've talked about a little bit out of Miami, that running back room got a little bit gutted with him and Trevante Citizen finding their way into the portal. He is committed to Ole Miss. This was the one that felt like it was pushing that direction for quite some time, and it is now official. I think Damian Martinez, that was a team that was thrown out there for him, but it feels like Damian Martinez is down to pretty much Miami, which we'll get to here in a second. But another one, Kyle Ford, is heading back to USC. This is a guy that started his career at USC before taking a little sojourn to their rival in UCLA last year. And in his Instagram post or his Twitter post, the way he put it was, "Sorry, I'm tripping. I'm back." So he obviously is having some fun with that. It seemed like he was very nervous to go back on that trip to USC after that year at UCLA, which makes total sense. But hopefully he's found his way back to where he should be, and will definitely be a red zone asset for the Trojans, a super big body that could be very, very helpful for them. Isaiah Rakes is a defensive lineman from USC, was a former A&M player as well. He has made his way back into the SEC. He is going to be playing for Auburn. Auburn needs just as much depth on both of those lines as possible, especially in the SEC. So a good pickup. Not necessarily a guy that has hit his ceiling yet, but if you can get a little bit out of him, make him kind of that rotational guy, I think he could be very, very helpful. And then another guy that is sticking around, just like Jay Toia, Kobe Bryant is a guy, not the Kobe Bryant, obviously. He is the guy, a corner at Kansas. I believe he was actually named after Kobe Bryant, if I'm not mistaken, although it's spelled differently. He had been linked to Colorado and kind of this craziness that, there is some tampering, there is some contacting kids when you probably shouldn't. But he made some Jayhawk fans a little bit nervous there for a second, but he is sticking around, which is a huge thing for them. Definitely someone that they need on that roster and someone that could very much help that defense. So a huge, huge thing for Kansas, and definitely someone that could be a huge difference maker for them. But let's get to some intel on what's going on around some of the players that are still in the portal and could be committing here pretty soon. So let's start with Damian Martinez. He is the guy that kind of is setting the pace for pretty much everyone else in this portal. It seems like the Miami Hurricanes are the team to beat. A couple of crystal balls have been put in from the big guys over there at On3 and 247 for him to commit to the Hurricanes, and I expect that to happen here pretty soon. I think Miami has a remarkable offensive line. Him with Cam Ward would be a crazy duo in that backfield, so I think that's what I expect to happen. I think I would definitely be on commitment watch if I was Miami fans around Damian Martinez. Another running back who is probably the second best back in this portal is Penny Boone, a guy that is coming from Toledo, was a huge player in the MAC a year ago. He's apparently narrowed down his search to UGA and Kentucky. He made it very clear that he wants to be in the SEC, and it seems like it's going to be in Lexington. A lot of UGA insiders have said he did not expect them, UGA, to get this kid, and a lot of crystal balls have been put in, specifically from Steve Wiltfong, for Kentucky in this race. So I expect him to end up being a Wildcat, and I expect him to commit maybe sometime today, to be totally honest with you. Jaden Rashada, one of the guys that we've talked about a lot on here, he is on a visit to UGA currently, and it sounds like he might just not leave. Radi Nabulsi over at UGAsports.com says he is on commitment watch, so we will definitely keep an eye on that throughout the next couple of days. It could be that he is a UGA student by Monday, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that throughout this next little bit. But Keandre Lambert-Smith is another guy we're watching very, very closely. He has gone on visits to Auburn and Texas A&M, and those are the teams right now. He has apparently narrowed it down to those two squads. USC and Florida State were trying very hard to get him on campus, but it seems like he's locked in on those two teams. Now, I'm not exactly sure who would have the edge here. I think adding him to the Auburn wide receiver group would make them just remarkable, to be totally honest with you. Having someone like Cam Coleman and then having that almost security blanket in Keandre Lambert-Smith would be just remarkable. And then Texas A&M definitely needs just a little bit of help at that wide receiver position. So I think either way, it would be a great pickup for both these teams. for some reason, I'm leaning Auburn, but I don't really know why. So we'll figure out what happens there. Cormani McClain is another guy that probably has made the most headlines. It looks like he might be heading to the Sunshine State. Uh, it seems like South Florida and Central Florida are the teams to watch. So Gus Malzahn's still making some noise in the portal, along with that Nigel Kelly commitment. And I think this would be a great thing for both these teams. I think it would be a great thing for him. I think being at a school that has a little bit of less eyes, you have the ability to kind of just settle in and play football. And I think that's one of the things that kind of eluded him when he was at Colorado. And one of the things for him that apparently is a big deal is he wants to play both sides of the football, and it seems like both those schools are willing to give him that opportunity. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there and which school ends up getting his services. But USF and UCF seem to be the leaders in the clubhouse right now. And UCF did not stop there. They are in on Jason Zandamela, a guy that is a huge interior offensive lineman from the class prior that will definitely play a big-time part going forward. It seems like UCF and Florida are the two teams that are kind of standing out there, so would be a huge pickup for either one of those teams. If Gus Malzahn can continue to pull in these guys the way they have, this UCF team could be a little bit more dangerous than some people might assume they could be. But let's finally get to some new names in the portal, because yesterday was quite the day. It felt like a lot of guys jumped in, a couple of really high-profile guys jumped in, and running back was where a lot of the damage was done. And it starts with Dylan Edwards, the guy that has really was remarkable, really, for Colorado a year ago, especially in that TCU game, just set the world on fire and made everyone think, this might be one of the best playmakers in the entire country. Well, he is now in the portal, and there are a couple of teams that have kind of stood out above everything else. Now, throughout his high school recruitment, he was committed to Kansas State and then decommitted and then found his way to Notre Dame for a time and then decommitted and then went to Colorado. So those are the two teams that you're watching in particular, Kansas State and Notre Dame. And Kansas State quarterback Avery Johnson has already done a little bit of recruiting. He's posted some pictures of them playing youth ball. I guess they were former youth teammates, and has posted them on his Instagram story. So it's very obvious that he wants him in Manhattan, and honestly, that's probably where I would guess that he would end up, but who knows? We'll see what happens with him. Tons of teams will be after him, but with that connection with Avery Johnson, it might just be where he's supposed to be in Manhattan. But another couple of running backs here, John Emery, a guy that was very, very highly touted coming out of high school, ran into some injury troubles during his time at LSU, but is very, very talented and definitely has a ton of ability. So it probably will be a little bit of a smaller program this time around, but could definitely thrive at that smaller program. Xavion Red is another guy who was at Texas last year, was kind of a wildcat, short yardage type back because the dude's about 240 pounds at about 6 foot. So he's a big dude. So any team that could get him would be very happy in those short yardage, red zone situations. I'm not exactly sure how much of a down-in, down-out back he is, but maybe he could be. He definitely didn't necessarily get the biggest chance to be on the field with all of the running backs that are at Texas right now. So I'm very excited to see where he ends up. And then Jalen Berger is a second-time transfer that started his career in Wisconsin before making his way to Michigan State. And not exactly sure what the market will look like for this kid, but has played tons of good football. And a lot of it is behind him, but plenty of it could be in front of him as well. So I think there will definitely be teams out there looking for him. Tons of teams after running backs, and some big-time names jumped in. So they got a little bit of help on that front. The defense had a number of additions, particularly across the defensive line. And it starts with Derek Harmon from Michigan State. One of the biggest names in the portal right now. And Michigan State has already had Barrow Jr. join the portal, so definitely taking some hits up there in East Lansing. But this is a guy that is an absolute beast on the inside. So many teams are going to be after him because so many teams need that other defensive tackle. There are teams that have not taken any. Texas has already gone in on the party, but we'll definitely need one more in that group. So it'll be really interesting to see where he ends up. Plenty of teams will be after him, but I think this one might take a little bit just because of how many different calls he's probably getting right about now. Tyler Barron, who was on campus at Tennessee for about 15 minutes before he decided to enter back in after the spring. He came in from Louisville. He was committed to Ole Miss during the portal, then decommitted, went to Tennessee, and now he's back in the portal. So this kid has bounced around quite a bit, and I think there will be a little bit of buyer beware here, at least with some teams. I think some teams will be a little bit more wary of someone that has been a little bit all over the place for the past couple of months. But at the end of the day, kids sometimes make that wrong decision initially, and hopefully he can find the place that he fits the best. But who knows what happened there? But definitely a very interesting situation for Tennessee, and not what you wanted, because although you have James Pierce Jr., you'd love as much help in that pass rushing as possible. And then Jared Wayne, a edge rusher from Miami, he was a huge prospect coming out of high school, was committed to Georgia for some time, and then decommitted, went to Miami, and just never quite got on the field. Has a lot of potential, but just kind of an untapped potential. But we'll definitely be watching that as we go throughout the next little bit here. And then on the back end, we had a couple, or really one that kind of stood out among everyone else, is Terrence Brooks, someone that I did not expect to jump in the portal. He is, in my opinion, although Dylan Edwards might be the biggest name, I think Terrence Brooks is not far behind him. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, went to Texas, and played really good football for 2 years. Now, he had kind of a shaky spring, but was a starter in 2023 and was definitely going to be a part of their rotation in 2024, possibly a really big part of their rotation. Might have not started, not exactly sure, but this is a kid that plenty of teams will be after just because of the absolute talent that this kid has. I think his best football is still ahead of him. I think he will definitely be able to develop into a remarkable player once he kind of just sets his feet in the ground and really goes to work. But a remarkable kid that has a remarkable amount of talent. So very excited to see where he ends up. And I think whoever gets him is getting a really, really good corner. That's for sure. But that will do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast. Tons covered in this one. We will get back tomorrow, talk a little bit about the SEC and the Big Ten, some decisions that could have been made that would have changed college football very drastically, very quickly. We'll get into tomorrow, but thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does mean a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages for all of the updates in content and everything you could possibly need in the world of sports. We have you covered, so definitely check out all of the shows that we have running on the GSMC network. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.